Hey writers, it's Megan coming at you live from Author Like a Boss. I'm going to get us shared in the Author Like a Boss Facebook group. Ooh, la la. If you are not already over there hanging out, having fun, make sure you join us. Ella and I have live trainings we do each week. She talks about marketing, I talk about writing. It is good time. So I'm going to get it shared up in that group. If you're watching from somewhere else, again, make sure to join us in the Author Like a Boss Facebook group so you can get all of our best tips. Ooh, and if you're on already, give me a mic check. How is my sound? How's my volume doing today? Okay. Author Like a Boss. There we go. All right. Okay, we are all shared up. All right. Oh, excellent. All right, so hello again. I am Megan coming at you live from the Author Like a Boss Facebook group and Facebook page. And Ella and I love getting questions and comments from you guys, whether you put them on the pin post or you let us know in response to a video. We love it when you tell us your questions about authoring like a boss because, you know, we do these live trainings. We each do one once a week, and we get our topics from the kinds of questions you guys ask. We're always interested in what you're learning about, what you're struggling with, what you're wanting to be doing. So keep your great questions coming, and we'll keep our great videos coming. All right. Hey, Alexia, great to see you. Woohoo. Okay, so I take it I see it much better. So I don't know if I had bad sound and now it's better, but I'm glad it's much better. All right. So I'm going to jump in today and let you know I have cat hair stuck to me. No, that's not what I want to let you know. I want to let you know what we're going to be talking about today because it's something that's important no matter what genre you write. Whether you're writing horror or you're writing children's stories, if you want to author like a boss, you have to plot like a boss because it's the difference between a story that satisfies readers and one that leaves them hanging. And what we're going to be talking about today and focusing on specifically is rising action and falling action in your plot and connecting that to your character arc. All right, so I'm curious, who out there watching, whether you're watching live or you're watching the recording, has ever written a novel or a short story and all of a sudden you felt like you just slammed into the end like a brick wall? You're writing along, you've got a great beginning, a great middle, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm at the end and it feels really rushed. I don't know what to do to unrush it. Has that ever happened to you? Oh, hey, Barbara, glad to see you. Have you ever just hit up against the end and you're like, oh, that came a lot sooner than I was planning on? And maybe you've even had this experience when you've read a story and you go, oh, the end already? What happened to the rest of this book? It's something that has definitely happened to me. I get really excited. I know where I'm going. I get the end in there and I read back through the draft. I'm like, oh, that end came way too soon. And it just kind of hits you and you go, how do I make a little bit more space there? Mike says the ending of Shogun. Oh gosh, it's been so many years since I've read that. I can't even recall. I know I loved those books in high school, but I can't remember the ending. That doesn't bode well. Barbara's saying, yes, you got stopped in your tracks. All right. I'm glad I'm not the only one. It's kind of frustrating, right? Because you want the book to have a satisfying end for your readers. You don't want them to finish reading and go, that was, I kind of got cheated. So to prevent like getting to the exciting parts prematurely, and maybe that's getting to your end prematurely, or maybe for some of us, it's climaxing prematurely. Can I say that in a writing group? But it's getting to those exciting moments, whether it's in the 3/4 of the way point through your story or the end of your story too soon. That's what we want to avoid. So to avoid getting there too fast, we're going to focus on 3 points. The first is connecting your plot to your character arc. Then we're going to talk about building your rising action, and then we're going to talk about building falling action. Sound like a good plan to you guys? Are you down with this? You into it? Let me know. Oh, hey, Danny. Hey, Carrie. Ooh, nice to see so many familiar faces. Yes. Oh, Alexia says currently dealing with maximum word count and it's stressful. Oh no. Well, this is still going to be really helpful because having the right number of words is not the same as having the right number of the right words, if that makes sense, right? You don't stop writing the draft when you have a certain word count. You stop when the story is done, and it may mean you need to go back and pare down other parts, but you still want to be really clear. I mean, then you want to be especially clear about your rising action and your falling action and picking what are the scenes, what are the moments it's really important to have. Okay, cool. Oh, Carrie says she's having this issue right now. Oh man, well, let's get you sorted, Carrie. All right, and I'm gonna check comments on the other post. I'm looking at you guys in 2 different places. So if I miss your comment in one place, I do apologize, but I'll go back through after. All right, so let's jump in and talk about connecting your plot to your character arc. And let's define those 2 terms. So plot is the stuff that happens, the events. Character arc is why we care about those events, because they're connected to your central conflict, and that's what your main character is experiencing throughout your story. So when you're planning your plot, you want it to correspond to your main character's character arc. That's how your main character is growing or changing over the course of the story. We don't care about a lot of exciting events happening unless they're connected to somebody's journey. And not every character arc involves a character having, like a total change of heart and becoming somebody completely different. But every character arc sends your main character on a journey. So relax. If you don't have a main character who grows and rediscovers herself, that's totally fine. It doesn't have to be that way, but you still have a character arc. It's the journey your character is traveling along, and it's why we care about the events, because they impact your main character in some way. All right. So when you connect plot and character arc, it's going to help you in 2 key ways. The first is it's actually going to help you come up with key plot points, because you can ask yourself questions like, what kind of scene would force my main character to be a bit braver, if your character is growing and changing? Or what kind of scene would show that my main character isn't going to take any more guff, right? This is how much she'll stand and she won't stand anymore. So you can start actually coming up with scenes and events based on the journey you want your main character to have. And the second way it helps, if you think about character arc and plot at the same time, is you're going to make sure your plot points don't seem to come out of left field, right? So one reason that a climax or an ending feels rushed is that characters are all of a sudden stronger or braver or smarter or more functional or, whatever more than we've seen them before. So if you map out your plot and your character arc together, you can ask questions like, would my main character really do that at this point in her development? Or do I have to show that growth a little bit more? Or, maybe what would prep her for that moment? So having these 2 side by side, your arc and your plot, is going to help you be honest really about, can I show this scene yet, or do I have to do some more development and get people ready for that scene, get my character ready for that scene? And it's so key, and it's why in the Author Boss Academy, the plot map that we have in the writing course includes both events, plot events and character arcs. So you work on them in tandem and you can overlap them. If you're interested in finding out more about the Author Boss Academy, join us for a webinar tomorrow. I will put the link to that in the comments. I'll be telling you a little bit more about the Academy later on. But let me know how this is hitting you so far. Can you see why looking at your character arc and your plot at the same time would help you avoid making those big jumps? Scale of 1 to 10, do you think that would be helpful if you were looking at both together for making those big jumps? Cassandra says, can you talk about how to slow down the action in your climactic moment, especially when there's also a lot of physical action happening. Ooh, yeah. Okay, Danny says, yes, this is making sense. So Cassandra, let me pause here and yeah, let's talk about that question. Planning your climactic scene, I think, is the best way to slow it down. For me, what happens, and see if you relate to this, Cassandra, or anybody else, when I rush through a scene, it generally happens because I haven't really thought about other things I want to include. Like if I'm rushing through a scene, I find it's because my outline is very shallow. You know, I get through the end of it and I kind of look at it and go, that's sparse. And I look back at my outline and realize, yeah, I didn't have a lot that I'd planned that I wanted to reveal there. But if you take the time when you're planning your climax to ask, you know, the first big question is, what is it that my character needs to be facing at this moment? You know, what is the thing she has to come up against that she's been avoiding for this whole book? You know, whether it's a person or a situation or making a tough choice, you know, what's that key thing she's got to come up against? And once you have that plan, then you can look at, what kind of pacing do I want? Do I want there to be a slow build? You know, what are the steps for leading up to facing that? And then what are the steps in actually facing it? And then what's kind of a, I don't know, denouement, like a mini denouement in the climax itself, like if that makes sense, like a little mini resolution to the climax. Cassandra, I don't know if you're a free writer, but my best strategy and what I recommend for other authors is to free write. And I mean, there are a lot of different topics we have in the Academy, but it's things like, what's the big danger that your character should be facing? What's the greatest fear she's got, and therefore something she should be facing? What has she never been able to do up to this point that she's now going to have to do? So how's that sounding to you, Cassandra? If you had more of a sense of the content you wanted to include, do you think it would be easier to elongate the scene? And you're asking specifically about a lot of physical action. I would say map it out in whatever modality makes sense to you, whether that's drawing it, whether that's getting up and acting it out, whether that's making a storyboard or some kind of graphic organizer, and thinking through who's going to be where, when, and doing what. So, you know, if this is a battle scene, you can start to just map it out. And this, you don't have to be able to draw well. You know, it's like stick figures and even just dots with people's names on them. But that will help elongate your climactic scene as well, right? Because then you'll be thinking about, okay, well, where is so-and-so on the battlefield? And how long would it take her to get over here? And in between these two things, what does the landscape look like? Does she have to climb a mountain or, you know, ford a stream or something like that? So I guess a couple things in answer to your question. One, make sure you know emotionally what's at stake so you can, you know, figure out all the beats you want. And two, figure out like what the physicality is of your characters getting to where they need to get and see if you can lengthen it. So let me know, Cassandra, if that answers your question. And let's see. Mike says, get it all out of your system in the first draft, Alexa, and then go back and edit. Yep. What Mike says. Absolutely. You know, let it be long and let it be rough. So once you've, you know, thought about making this connection between your plot and your character arc, let's get down a little bit in more detail and talk about rising action. So rising action is what happens between your inciting incident and your climax. And I talked about inciting incident last week. And remember, that's what gets the conflict started for your main character. That's what draws her into the problem. The problem might have existed for a long time, but the inciting incident is what puts your character on the path to her climax because she's now involved in a, you know, in a way she can't avoid. So, you know, it's called rising action because things are getting tense. Here's what's happening in rising action. Firstly, your main character is working toward some objective, right? And then smaller problems are arising along the way to solving that main conflict. What's also happening is readers are continuing to bond with your main character. Tension is mounting as readers wonder whether your main character will ever reach her objective, right? They start to care more and the danger probably increases as you're moving toward that ultimate face-off in the climax. And this rises at a macro level, right? So both your plot and your character arc should be increasing in intensity, moving toward the climax. But things can, you know, there can be these little ups and downs. Things can get worse and then get better. or they can even plateau, right? Maybe your character makes some forward progress toward learning and growing, and then she backslides, right? So you have these little ups and downs, these little kind of mini mountains, but it's all trending toward more growth, more challenge, more intensity, more danger, moving toward the climax. So I want to take you through a couple of common patterns. We actually go through more patterns than this in the Academy, but let me just show you what 3 common patterns of rising action look like so you can see, hey, could I use that in my story? So here's one really common pattern. In the rising action, the main character is collecting skills, experience, and wisdom. That would be the rising action pattern in The Hobbit. Bilbo keeps facing new dangers. They've got to get past some trolls. There are goblins. There are, what are those things called? The wargs, the kind of wolvish, right? It's like out of the frying pan into the fire because they just escape from one thing and then they find themselves in another bad situation, right? So that is a great way to build rising action because you're encountering a lot of small challenges, which of course is increasing the intensity of the action, but also is a great chance for your character to keep learning and growing. Thank you, Wayne. Wargs. Yes. That's why I like hanging out with authors, because you guys are all readers too. Another common form of rising action that could be really helpful for thinking about, like, what do I include? How can I stretch out this time? Is your main character collecting other characters. This is what happens in The Wizard of Oz, right? As Dorothy is trying to get to see the wizard, she's meeting the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Cowardly Lion. And she's getting a chance to take care of them. She's getting a chance to be more confident. All these things happen in her character development. And of course, there are mini conflicts in the sense that she has to decide to be friends with them or to, does she trust them? And then also they become her helpers. And so it opens up more action that can happen in the plot. Ashley says Ellie is collecting characters. Ooh, awesome. Yeah, collecting characters is a great thing to happen in your rising action. So you can think about using that as a pattern. Another common pattern we see in rising action is your main character getting pushed more and more and more and more until a point where she can't take it anymore. And a great example of that is Evelyn is her first name, I believe. Evelyn Couch in the movie Fried Green Tomatoes, portrayed by Kathy Bates, right? This is the story of a woman just getting pushed around and pushed around and pushed around. And finally she reaches a breaking point and she's like, I can't take it anymore. And she lets out the rage and she becomes more independent for it. Okay, so again, those are just 3 of several common patterns. But if you start to think about an overall trend for your rising action, can you see that that would be really helpful? You would start to go, oh, okay, yeah, now I've got some more plot ideas. I know my character is going to have some opportunities to learn and grow. And you can start putting it into actual steps. Think about, I'm going to learn this and grow this much, then I'll learn this much and grow this much from that experience. Okay. Yeah, Wayne, I agree. Great movie. It's one of my go-to examples for character arc and development. I quite enjoy her. All right, and Carrie says, even my minor characters have arcs and I want to include to help make the story more dimensional and real. Oh yeah, great point. You'll have arcs for characters who, beyond your main character, and having, the rising action also gives you the opportunity to develop those arcs, to develop subplots, there's so much you could do with subplots because you're not only giving depth to other characters, but actually it can be really helpful in your pacing, right? If you want to create some space between exciting moments that happen with your main character, that's when you can bring in some subplot. Lots of cool stuff. Cassandra says also the try-fail cycle. Yep. I keep trying to do it, and it's not working. Yeah. So if you think of your rising action as some kind of trend, then it can be a lot easier to put together. So as I mentioned, there are tons more of these patterns, and we cover additional types of them in the Author Boss Academy. But the best way, I think, to build this sequence is to get just, personalized help with that. And that's the other thing we do, of course, with one-on-one coaching in the Academy. Because then you can figure out, what would my character do in this situation, and talk with somebody who knows your character because you've been talking about your character. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about subplots and creating space. So subplots are really just conflicts that are centered around other characters beside your main character. And you want to be careful with subplots. You don't want to create a subplot that's more exciting and interesting than whatever your main character is going through, right? Because then people kind of look at it and they go, well, why wasn't the story about him instead of our actual main character, right? So you don't want to let subplots overrun things, but they can be a really powerful way to, again, set up that pacing, and to give more substance so that you avoid this whole, remember, the big problem we're trying to avoid is having your exciting moments just come way too quickly. So if you create a step-by-step plan for your main character's rising action, and also a step-by-step rising action plan for each subplot, and those will have fewer steps. But if you have each of those laid out, then you can put them, you can kind of shuffle them together, right? And you can alternate, and you'll figure out and create the right pacing. And that's fantastic to do, especially for a really action-packed book where you want to give the reader moments to rest in between scenes of great intensity, or you want to create more suspense. You want us to have to wait a chapter or two before finding out what happened to your main character. So is that making sense? Can you guys see how creating step-by-step rising action, both for your main character and for minor characters or even antagonists, is going to help you control that length of that upward arc? Let me know on a scale of 1 to 10 if that's making sense, if you can see that creating those steps in your rising action would put you in charge of how quickly your climax comes. Wayne says, could a subplot be people trying to figure out your main character's backstory? Sure, yeah, absolutely. And then that's clever, because then we as readers get to get a little bit more insight into why your main character is doing what he's doing, and yeah. But again, you know, anytime you're creating subplot, you just don't want it to be more exciting than the actual plot. You don't want to have us be more engaged. Okay, cool, I'm getting a 10. Thanks for the feedback. So now let's look at coming down the other side of the mountain and the falling action. The falling action is what happens between the climax and that resolution, that end. And it doesn't have to be as long as your rising action, but it does have to tie up loose ends. So in your falling action, your main character is picking up the pieces from the climax and basically deciding what to do next. This is also where you're going to resolve your subplots. And just like with your rising action, this should happen step by step. So think about taking one point at a time to resolve, you know, like one thing that happened on the way up on your rising action that was significant, you know, take one at a time to solve. And that will give you a handful of chapters or scenes that make readers feel like everything that was open is now closed. And you don't have to give each individual issue its own scene if that doesn't feel right, you know. You can definitely combine them. Think about the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion can all own their new traits and their strengths in the single chapter or scene, right? When they're all like confronting the wizard, like Dorothy didn't get what she asked for. So they don't each have to get their own scene where we see, oh yeah, you're brave and you have a heart and you have a brain. But Dorothy, our main character, still has to figure out how to get home, you know, so we didn't get all the solutions in once. So 3 supporting characters got their resolutions at the same time, but our main character still gets her resolution separately. And it just spaces things out more. In Bilbo's story, the falling action actually includes a giant war, right? So his climax is facing Smaug, but the book is far from over after that. It takes a lot more steps for him to come to terms with exactly how much of a burglar he's comfortable being, right? Like he's got the Arkenstone and they keep asking for it. And he's like, oh, am I going to give it back or not? And then he's got to survive. He's got to get back home. So there's a lot of falling action in The Hobbit. And that makes perfect sense for its genre, right? It's high fantasy. There's a lot of action. So a lot of downward steps. For some genres, the falling action might be more centered around wounds healing or just conversations and explanations and apologies and everybody kind of getting right with one another. This is a place where free writes are super helpful. And in the Author Boss Academy, we have free writes that are geared for each part of your plot and your character arc. But especially, you know, to plan where your main character should be by the end of your novel, because that really helps you plan your falling action. If you can picture the scene you want to be the final view of your main character, then you can plan backwards and get get all those steps. I like to think of falling action like the cool down to a workout. I don't know if that image makes sense to anybody else. But it's not enough to just tell readers how everything comes out. You have to prepare them first, like prepare them mentally and emotionally for the end of the book. And for books with tons of action, that means wrapping up all or nearly all of the loose ends of the plot. The reason I say nearly all is because if you're writing a series, yes, you can definitely have some problems that are unresolved, and you can even use your falling action to plant some new seeds. Like new problems can arise that are going to have to be taken on in later books. And if your climax is really emotionally or psychologically intense, you're going to have to give readers a bit of space to process emotions. To use another analogy besides a workout, this is like cuddling after sex, guys. You got to do it. you got to do it. You got to let those emotions cool down. And if you think about your falling action in that way, then all of a sudden it's this opportunity not just for your characters to wrap up whatever they need to, but also for you to think about guiding your readers. You as an author are a guide. And when we get to an end and it just feels like that, that happened too quickly, we're I don't know, we get like emotionally scarred or something. And so it's really your job to just ease readers down. And you can even think about that in terms of mood. You can think about, how will my reader be feeling at the climax? Are there going to be like these emotions that are really high up like this? And then your job is to kind of like help somebody breathe, cool down, and just get to a place where by the resolution of the book, she's like, I feel good. I'm ready to go back out into the world. Like, tantrum over. So think of yourself as the emotional guide. All right, so is that making sense? Can you see how this is going to help you avoid rushing the end? Let me know on a scale of 1 to 10. You can see how this might slow you down, whether you are slowing down because you're taking the time to wrap up plot points, whether you're slowing down because you're giving your main character a chance to adjust psychologically to the new normal, or even if you're just focused on, for any of you out there who are really good at calming down friends or loved ones when they're in a very kind of state of mind, you'll be good at this, because you'll be like, oh yeah, my reader's gonna need a little bit like this, then we'll have a scene where somebody's looking at the ocean, be calming. Yeah, okay, awesome. Oh, great question. Cassandra says, when do you recognize the resolution has been complete and you aren't dragging it out unnecessarily? Ooh, I would say return to your intention. What did you want to be the reaction readers had? How did you want them to feel at the very end? Whether that's crying, that's hopeful, that's sad, I don't know. Pick a moment, pick an emotion, and get us to that emotion. And the reality is you'll have to play with it. And this is a great time to ask your beta readers because you're attempting to lengthen things so that it doesn't feel abrupt, but you are inside your story. So I think this is a really fantastic time for you to return to your intention. How did I want people to feel when they ended this book? And then also ask for feedback specifically. And what I love to do when asking beta readers is, I don't want to plant the seed. I don't want to say, did the ending feel rushed or did the ending feel too long? Because you might plant a seed there. But you can ask, were there any places that you thought felt rushed? Or were there any places that you thought dragged on? And if you ask it that way, then you're more likely to get an honest opinion. But I would say that's a great time to use beta readers, because they'll know, they're the best source of, is it rushed, or was it too long, or was it just right, somewhere in the middle. So get some readers, Cassandra. That would be what I would recommend. All right. So let's see. Looking back at my notes. Oh, I have a take action step for y'all. That's where I am. Oh, yes. Okay, take action. Jot down what your climax will be. Then think about what you want the final scene will see your main character to be in. And think about where she'll be, what she'll be doing, and how she'll be feeling. Then start brainstorming the steps that should come between those two scenes so that we can ease toward the ending little bit by little bit by little bit. So this is an approach where you're using your main character's emotions and you're going, okay, in the climax, she like had to fight for her life against this, so her emotions are here. By the end, I want her emotions to be here. What are the steps she would go through to get to that? So that's your assignment for me. Remember, if you want to get notified when we're going live, you can sign up to get an alert through Facebook Messenger, and I will put the link to that in the comments. It's just a one-click deal, and then you can get notified when we go live. Okie doke. Carrie says, I call my friends, but no one can seem to call me. So if I get riled up and want action on action, it's hard to stop. Oh, that's when you got to write. Let your story calm you down. I don't know. Oh man. But then you've got a lot of great insight, Carrie, into what it takes to calm somebody down. So you can use it for your writing. All right, I mentioned I was going to tell you guys a little bit more about the Author Boss Academy, so here goes. The Academy is an online subscription program, and you get 24/7 access to courses on writing, marketing, publishing, and that's all delivered via videos, templates, checklists, step-by-step instructions. We have everything from building your world to plotting to smart editing so you don't unravel your whole story, to key marketing tasks like building your author website and what to send in your author newsletter and how to build your launch team. And if you guys follow Ella's marketing videos, you know her whole approach to marketing is about building connections and relationships, not about buying a lot of money or a lot of advertisements and spending a lot of money on a lot of fancy technology. So it's marketing that's really approachable to all authors. Plus in the Academy, you get hands-on coaching from both me and Ella live on weekly calls. That's where you ask your biggest questions, get your action steps, you know, what you can do next moving forward. And it's also our private Facebook group where we have a really tight-knit, fabulous community. The Academy is $59 a month. And we are doing a webinar about it tomorrow if you want to hear more about it and just chat with us and ask your questions. Come on by and have fun with us. Oh, thank you, Danny. And okay, I gotta put that in two places. Yes. All right, so hope we see you for the webinar tomorrow, and we hope we see you for our lives next week. Next week, I'm going to be wrapping up the month of talking about central conflict with a recap and also a Q&A. So if you have questions about rising action, falling action, climax, inciting incident, plot, character arc, central conflict, all that good stuff we've been talking about this month, make sure to add your questions to either the comments of this video or to the pinned post in the Author Like a Boss Facebook group. And next week, Ella will be continuing the month of training she's been doing about social media, and she's going to be giving important tips about what not to do on social media, as well as doing a live Q&A. So again, make sure to add your questions about social media to the pinned post, and if you want to get notified about when we are going live, I will put that link in the comments again. All right. Oh, no, Cassandra, you don't have to go through the webinar. I will PM you if you would like to just have a straight link to the Academy. In fact, I will just... The reason we put that link through the webinar is that when you go to the Academy page, if you're not signed up, it looks like all the courses are different. You see all the courses and it looks like each one is something different. You have to sign up separately, and that's in fact not the case. So we don't want it to be confusing and look like, oh, I have to choose one of these things. But I will PM you a link to that. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish you happy writing, and I will catch you next time. Bye.